Sophia Chen lived in a world of sheet music and quiet rooms. For 20 years, she had taught music at Oak Ridge High School, guiding countless students through their first fumbling attempts at Mozart and Chopin. But in all those years, she had never once performed in front of a real audience. That was by choice. Sophia belonged behind the scenes, helping others shine while she remained in the shadows. The small house on Maple Street had grown too quiet in the past 2 years. Tom's absence filled every corner like a heavy fog that never lifted. Sometimes Sophia would catch herself setting 2 plates for dinner, or calling out his name when she heard a noise at the front door. Those moments would bring her crashing back to reality. He was gone, taken by an illness that moved too quickly for anyone to prepare. After Tom died, the piano in the living room sat untouched for months, its polished surface collecting dust. It had been their piano, the one Tom had surprised her with on their 10th anniversary. "Because you deserve to play on something beautiful," he had said, his eyes crinkling at the corners the way they always did when he smiled. Now, Sophia only played late at night when the neighborhood was asleep, and her teenage daughter May had gone to bed. In those quiet hours, her fingers would find the keys, and she would play softly as if afraid to wake the ghosts of happier times. The music became her private conversation with Tom, things she couldn't say out loud, feelings she couldn't share with anyone else. "Mom, you've got mail," May said one Saturday morning, dropping a stack of envelopes on the kitchen counter. At 17, May had her father's height and her mother's serious eyes. Since Tom's death, she had taken on responsibilities no teenager should have to bear, becoming both daughter and caretaker to a mother who sometimes forgot to eat. Sophia flipped through the usual bills and advertisements until she came to a bright blue flyer. "Spring Talent Showcase," it announced in cheerful letters. "All proceeds benefit the Children's Hospital Music Therapy Program." "You should enter," May said casually, buttering her toast with studied concentration. Sophia's laugh came out sharper than she intended. "Me on stage? No, thank you. Dad always said you were amazing." May looked up, meeting her mother's eyes. "He told me once that when you played, it was like the whole world stopped to listen." Sophia turned away, busying herself with the coffee maker. "Your father was biased. Mrs. Rivera from next door said you almost went to music school before you decided to teach." "That was a long time ago," Sophia said, pouring coffee with slightly trembling hands. "And it doesn't matter now." Later that evening, after May had gone out with friends, Sophia found herself standing in front of the piano. The house felt especially empty tonight. She sat down on the bench and lifted the cover, revealing the keys that had once been as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. Her fingers hovered uncertainly, then began to play. The notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune filled the room, Tom's favorite piece. It had been their song, the one he had requested every anniversary. She closed her eyes, letting memory guide her through the gentle rises and falls of the melody. When she opened her eyes again, May was standing in the doorway, jacket still on, watching with an expression that reminded Sophia so much of Tom it made her heart ache. "That was beautiful, Mom," May said softly. "Dad would have loved it." Sophia closed the piano lid gently. "It's getting late." "I did something today," May said, stepping into the room. "Please don't be mad." The hesitation in her daughter's voice made Sophia look up. "What is it?" "I entered your name in the talent showcase." The words came out in a rush. "They had a table set up at the mall and I thought maybe it would be good for you." "You what?" Sophia felt her chest tighten. "May, how could you do that without asking me?" "Because I knew you'd say no." May's voice rose slightly. "Mom, you haven't left this house except for school in months. You don't see friends, you don't do anything that makes you happy. The only time you play piano is when you think no one can hear you." "That's not true," Sophia protested, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Dad wouldn't want this for you," May said, her voice softening. "He'd want you to live, not just exist." Sophia stood up, suddenly needing to move. "I can't perform in front of people, May. I just can't." "Why not?" May challenged. "You're the one who's always telling your students to face their fears. That's different." "How?" Sophia paced the living room, running her hands through her graying hair. "I haven't performed since college. I'd make a fool of myself." "So what if you do?" May asked. "What's the worst that could happen?" "People would laugh," Sophia said, voicing the fear that had followed her since childhood, when a recital gone wrong had left her in tears, vowing never to play for an audience again. And if they did, would that be the end of the world? May's question hung in the air between them. Sophia sank back onto the piano bench. You don't understand. Then help me understand, May said, sitting beside her mother. Because all I see is someone who used to love music hiding from it. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. Another remnant of Tom, who had collected timepieces with the enthusiasm of someone who believed he had all the time in the world. The showcase is to raise money for the music therapy program, May said finally, the same program that helped Dad in his last weeks. Sophia remembered the kind-eyed woman who had brought a portable keyboard to Tom's hospital room, how the music had seemed to ease his pain when nothing else could, how he had squeezed Sophia's hand during a Bach piece and whispered, "Promise me you'll play again someday." A promise she had broken the moment he was gone. One song, May pressed. That's all. And I'll be right there in the front row. Sophia looked at her daughter, this remarkable young woman who carried both her parents in her determined expression. I'll think about it, she said. Finally, 2 weeks later, Sophia found herself sitting at the piano after school hours. The empty classroom both a comfort and a challenge. She had chosen Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, not because it was showy, but because it spoke to her, its gentle melancholy giving way to moments of unexpected hope. Her first attempts were halting, her fingers stiff with anxiety even with no audience present. By the 5th try, she could make it halfway through before making a mistake that sent her back to the beginning. You're too tense, she told herself, echoing words she had said to countless students over the years. Let the music breathe. Each day she practiced a little longer. Sometimes May would sit quietly in the back of the classroom, homework spread across a desk, pretending not to listen while Sophia worked through difficult passages again and again. Why this piece? May asked one evening as they drove home. Sophia kept her eyes on the road. Your dad and I saw it performed on our first date. He wasn't much for classical music back then, but something about this one caught him. Later he told me it reminded him of me. Complicated but worth figuring out, he said. May smiled. That sounds like Dad. As the showcase drew closer, Sophia's nerves grew worse. She woke from dreams where she walked on stage only to find the piano had no keys, or where the audience pointed and laughed before she played a single note. The night before the showcase, she sat at the kitchen table long after May had gone to bed, a cup of cold tea forgotten at her elbow. The application form sat before her, still unsigned. All she had to do was not show up. People dropped out of these things all the time. Her phone lit up with a text from Lee Wei, the school janitor who had become an unexpected friend in recent months, often bringing her coffee during her practice sessions. Remember what you tell your students, his message read. Music isn't about being perfect, it's about being honest. Sophia stared at those words for a long time. Then she picked up a pen and signed her name. Morning came too quickly. Sophia stood in front of her closet, pushing hangers back and forth without seeing the clothes. What did one wear to face a fear 20 years in the making? Her hands found a blue dress pushed to the back, the one Tom had always loved, claiming it matched the exact color of the sky on the day they met. She hadn't worn it since his funeral. I can't do this, she whispered to the empty room to Tom's memory. I'm not brave enough. But somehow she found herself in that blue dress, sitting in her car outside the community center, watching other performers walk in with instruments and confident smiles. Ready? May asked from the passenger seat, reaching over to squeeze her mother's cold hand. No, Sophia thought. I'll never be ready. But she nodded anyway and stepped out into the spring sunshine, feeling as though she were walking toward something much bigger than a small-town talent show, perhaps toward the woman she used to be, or maybe toward someone new entirely. The community center hummed with nervous energy. Backstage, performers of all ages adjusted costumes, tuned instruments, and whispered last-minute encouragement to each other. Sophia stood apart from the bustle, clutching her sheet music so tightly the pages crinkled at the edges. Mrs. Chen, you're on in 5 minutes. A young man with a clipboard and a harried expression poked his head through the curtain. You'll be after the dancing twins. Sophia nodded, not trusting her voice. The sound of applause filtered through from the main stage as a dance routine concluded. Her stomach twisted into knots. May appeared at her side, seemingly out of nowhere. "I saved front row seats for Mrs. Rivera and Mr. Lee," she said, referring to their neighbor and the school janitor. "They're super excited to see you play." "Great," Sophia managed, the word barely audible. "More people to witness my humiliation." "Mom." May took her hands, gently prying the crumpled sheet music from her grip. "You don't need this. You've played this piece 100 times. You know it by heart. What if I freeze up? What if I forget everything?" The questions tumbled out before Sophia could stop them. "Then you'll start again," May said simply. "Or you'll play something else. Or you'll walk off stage and we'll go get ice cream. The world won't end." From the stage came the sound of childish laughter and the unmistakable thump of someone dropping something heavy. The audience responded with good-natured chuckles. "See?" May smiled. "Nobody's perfect. That's not why they're here." "Mrs. Chen, you're up next," the clipboard man called, more urgently this time. May gave her mother a quick, fierce hug. "Dad used to say that courage isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing the thing anyway." Sophia closed her eyes briefly, hearing Tom's voice in those words. He had said that to her on their wedding day, when she'd confessed her terror of walking down the aisle with everyone watching. 2 minutes. The stage manager was practically dancing with impatience now. "I'll be right there," Sophia called back. She turned to May, suddenly desperate to explain something she couldn't quite put into words. "This piece, the way I play it, it's not perfect. It's not how the composer intended." "Good," May said firmly. "Play it your way." Then it was time. Sophia walked onto the stage, blinking in the bright lights. The piano waited at center stage, its polished surface reflecting the overhead spots. She made her way toward it, acutely aware of every step, every breath. The audience seemed impossibly large. Sophia hadn't expected so many people for a local talent show. She spotted May slipping into her front row seat between Mrs. Rivera and Mr. Lee. Her daughter gave her a thumbs up. Sophia sat down at the piano bench, adjusting it slightly. The movement made a loud scraping noise that echoed through the speakers. Someone in the back row tittered. Her hands hovered over the keys. In the harsh stage lighting, they looked older than she remembered, the veins more prominent, a slight tremor visible to anyone watching closely. She placed them on the keys, feeling the cool, familiar ivory beneath her fingertips. And then her mind went blank. The opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne, the piece she had played hundreds of times, vanished from her memory as if they had never existed. She stared at the keys, panic rising in her throat. 10 seconds passed. 20. A murmur ran through the audience. Sophia pressed a key experimentally. The sound rang out, amplified by the microphone positioned above the piano. Wrong note. Not even close to how the piece should begin. Someone coughed. Another person whispered loudly enough to be heard in the front rows. "Is she going to play something or what?" Sophia's face burned. She tried again, placing her fingers in position and beginning the piece. The first few notes came out correctly, but then her left hand stumbled, hitting a jarring discord. She stopped abruptly. A group of teenagers in the back row snickered. One said something to his friend, and they both laughed harder. The sound cut through Sophia like a knife. She started over, determined to push through. This time she made it through the opening section, the gentle rolling notes almost finding their rhythm. But as the piece moved into the more complex middle section, her fingers tangled again. A wrong note, then another, then a passage that came out rushed and garbled. The whispers grew louder. Someone at the back called out, "Maybe try chopsticks instead." More laughter followed, sweat beaded on Sophia's forehead. The blue dress that had felt like a tribute to Tom now felt like a costume she had no right to wear. She was a fraud, a middle-aged music teacher who had no business being on this stage. She forced herself to continue, but the piece had fallen apart. Notes that should have flowed together came out disjointed and harsh. The beauty of Chopin's composition was lost in her fumbling attempts to recapture the thread. The heckling from the back grew bolder. "My 5-year-old plays better than that." May's face in the front row had gone pale. Beside her, Mrs. Rivera looked angry, turning to glare at the hecklers. Mr. Lee stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable. Sophia's vision blurred. Was she crying? She couldn't cry here, not on stage, not in front of all these people. But the tears came anyway, hot and humiliating, making the keys swim before her eyes. She hit another wrong note, so discordant it made her wince. The piece was beyond salvaging now. Each attempt to get back on track only led her further astray, like being lost in a forest where every path circled back to the same spot. A young girl in the second row put her hands over her ears. Her mother quickly pulled them down, but the message was clear. The performance had become painful to listen to. Sophia stopped playing mid-phrase. The sudden silence felt even worse than the mangled music. She sat frozen, unable to move, unable to look at the audience. The MC, a local radio DJ who had been enthusiastically introducing acts all evening, stepped cautiously onto the stage. "Let's give Mrs. Chen a round of applause for her attempt," he said, the hesitation in his voice only adding to her mortification. A smattering of polite claps mixed with more giggles and whispers. Sophia stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over the piano bench. Without looking at anyone, she hurried off stage, her vision tunneling to the exit sign that seemed miles away. Backstage, she pushed past concerned stagehands and other performers, needing to get away, to hide, to disappear. "Mom! Mom, wait!" May's voice called from somewhere behind her. But Sophia couldn't stop. She burst through the backstage door into the cool night air, gulping it down as if she'd been underwater. The parking lot swam before her eyes, cars blurring through her tears. She fumbled for her keys, dropping them twice before managing to unlock the car door. Once inside, she gripped the steering wheel and finally let the sobs come, deep and wrenching, torn from some place inside her she'd kept locked away since Tom's death. A tap on the window made her jump. May stood outside, her young face etched with concern. Sophia hesitated, then unlocked the passenger door. May slid in without a word and simply put her arms around her mother. They sat that way for a long time, the occasional sound of applause drifting from the community center, the only reminder of what had just happened inside. "I'm so sorry," May finally whispered. "This is all my fault. I should never have pushed you to do this." Sophia pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "It's not your fault. It was my choice to go up there. Those jerks in the back row," May said, anger flashing in her eyes. "Mr. Lee told them off after you left. He made them leave." The thought of the quiet janitor standing up to a group of rowdy teenagers almost made Sophia smile. "Almost. I made such a fool of myself," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. "So what?" May asked, echoing her question from weeks before. "Is that the worst thing in the world?" Sophia stared at her daughter, ready to say that yes, public humiliation certainly felt like the worst thing in the world right now. But something in May's expression stopped her. "I lost Dad too, you know," May said softly, "and sometimes I think, at least you had him for 20 years. I only had 15, and now I feel like I'm losing you too." The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. She had been so wrapped up in her own grief that she had missed what was happening to her daughter. "You haven't lost me," she said, reaching for May's hand. "Haven't I? You're here, but you're not really here. You go to work, you come home, you hide away with the piano at night. It's like you're a ghost in our house." Sophia had no answer for that, because May was right. She had been haunting her own life rather than living it. "I thought this would help," May continued, gesturing toward the community center. "I thought if you played for people again, some part of you would wake up. But I was wrong and I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry for trying," Sophia said, surprising herself with the words. "Don't ever be sorry for that." They drove home in silence, the humiliation of the evening settling around Sophia like a heavy cloak. By the time they reached the house, she had made a decision. "I'm not going to teach piano anymore," she announced as they entered the living room. "I'll ask for a transfer to general music classes." May looked alarmed. "Because of one bad night?" "Because I can't teach what I can't do," Sophia said, her voice flat. "And clearly I can't do this anymore." She walked over to the piano, Tom's piano, and closed the lid with a decisive click. "Good night, May," she said, heading toward her bedroom. Behind her, she heard her daughter's quiet voice. "Dad would be disappointed." Sophia paused at the foot of the stairs but didn't turn around. "Your father isn't here." She closed her bedroom door behind her and sank onto the edge of the bed, still wearing the blue dress that now felt like a cruel joke. On the nightstand, Tom smiled at her from their wedding photo, forever young, forever believing in her. "I tried," she whispered to his image. "I really tried." But as she sat in the quiet house, Sophia knew that wasn't entirely true. She had gone through the motions, pushed by May's determination rather than her own. She had stepped onto that stage, still half dead, still hiding from life. The audience had seen it. They had heard it in every hesitant, misplaced note. No wonder they had laughed. Morning light filtered through the blinds, casting thin stripes across Sophia's bedroom floor. She had been awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying every humiliating moment of the previous night. The sound of laughter echoed in her mind, sharp and mocking. Downstairs, she could hear May moving around in the kitchen. The normal Saturday morning sounds: cereal being poured, the refrigerator door opening and closing, water running in the sink. Life going on as if nothing had happened. Sophia's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She ignored it. It had been buzzing on and off since last night. Probably well-meaning friends who had witnessed her disaster, trying to offer comfort she wasn't ready to receive. Eventually, she dragged herself out of bed. She caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror, hair disheveled, eyes puffy from crying, still wearing yesterday's makeup. She hardly recognized the woman staring back at her. Downstairs, May looked up from her bowl of cereal, her expression cautious. "Morning," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Morning," Sophia replied, heading straight for the coffee maker. Her hands moved on autopilot, measuring grounds, filling the water reservoir, pressing the start button. Normal actions for what would never again be a normal day. "Mrs. Rivera called," May said after a moment, and Mr. Lee texted. "They're worried about you." Sophia nodded but didn't respond. What was there to say? Sorry I made a fool of myself? Sorry you had to witness that train wreck? "Mom, it wasn't as bad as you think." May tried again. This time Sophia did turn around. "It was exactly as bad as I think. Probably worse," so some jerks laughed. Most people were supportive. Supportive? Sophia's laugh held no humor. "You mean the pity applause? The way people couldn't look me in the eye backstage? The DJ who couldn't even come up with something nice to say about my attempt?" May pushed her cereal bowl away. "At least you tried. That counts for something." "Does it?" Sophia poured her coffee with shaking hands. Some of it sloshed onto the counter, but she didn't bother to wipe it up. "Because from where I'm standing, all I did was prove that I should never have been up there in the first place. Dad would..." "Don't." Sophia cut her off, her voice sharper than intended. "Please, May. Not today." They finished breakfast in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. After cleaning up, May grabbed her backpack. "I'm meeting friends to study for midterms," she said, hovering in the doorway as if reluctant to leave. "Will you be okay?" "I'm fine," Sophia said automatically. The standard answer, the expected response. "Have fun." Once May was gone, the house fell into a heavy silence. Sophia wandered from room to room, unable to settle. Everything reminded her of last night. The blue dress now crumpled at the bottom of her closet. The program for the talent show still on the kitchen counter. The piano sitting accusingly in the corner of the living room. The piano. Tom's piano. Sophia approached it cautiously, as if it might bite. She ran her fingers along the closed lid, collecting dust. When was the last time she had properly cleaned it? Tom would have been disappointed. He had always kept it immaculate, polishing it every Sunday while listening to jazz records. Her phone buzzed again. This time she glanced at the screen. The school principal, probably calling about her request to switch from piano to general music classes. She let it go to voicemail. The walls of the house suddenly felt too close, the air too thick. Sophia grabbed her car keys without any clear destination in mind. She just needed to be somewhere else, anywhere but here with her thoughts and that silent piano. She drove aimlessly, taking random turns through neighborhoods where no one knew her, where no one had seen her fall apart on stage. Eventually, she found herself in the parking lot of Oak Ridge Cemetery. She hadn't consciously decided to come here, but now that she was, it felt inevitable. Tom's grave was in the newer section, beneath a young maple tree that had been planted the year after his death. The headstone was simple: his name, the dates that bracketed his too short life, and the words, "beloved husband and father," beneath. Sophia had agonized over those words at the time, feeling that no collection of letters could possibly capture who Tom had been. She sat on the small stone bench they had placed beside the grave, her fingers tracing the cool marble of the headstone. "I made a complete fool of myself last night," she said quietly. Talking to Tom had become a habit over the past 2 years, one she indulged only when she was alone. "You would have been so embarrassed." A gentle breeze stirred the leaves overhead. In the distance, a groundskeeper's mower hummed. "No, you're right. You wouldn't have been embarrassed." You would have stood up and told those laughing idiots to shut up. You never could stand bullies. She pulled a few stray weeds from around the base of the headstone. May entered me in that talent show. I should be angry with her, but I'm not. She was trying to help. She thinks I'm disappearing. The words hung in the air, their truth settling around her like the dust motes dancing in the sunlight filtering through the maple leaves. Am I, Tom? Am I disappearing? For 2 years, she had been going through the motions of living, teaching her classes, cooking meals, paying bills. But those were just the outlines of a life, not the substance of one. I don't know how to do this without you, she whispered. I don't know who I am anymore. She sat in silence for a long time, watching the shadows shift as the sun moved across the sky. In the distance, a family with young children visited another grave, the children placing flowers and speaking in excited whispers to someone who was no longer there. Life and death, side by side. Just as they had been in the hospital room when Tom took his last breath while outside the window, a new mother wheeled her newborn past the door, her face glowing with a joy that had seemed obscene to Sophia at the time. I need to know, she said finally, if it's okay to start living again. If it's okay to not be this half-person anymore, because that's what I've become, and last night proved it. I couldn't even play our song right. It came out all wrong, broken and twisted like me. She waited as if expecting an answer from the silent stone. None came, of course, just the distant sound of traffic and birds calling to each other from the trees. Then she realized something, a thought so obvious. She almost laughed aloud. You never cared if I played perfectly, she said softly. You used to love when I messed up that middle section of Clair de Lune. You said it made it uniquely mine. She remembered now how Tom would sit beside her on the piano bench, his shoulder warm against hers, and request that she play his version of Debussy, the one where she stumbled over the arpeggios in the middle but recovered with a flourish that wasn't in the original composition. I've been trying to be perfect, she continued, the realization washing over her. All these years teaching, I've been showing students how to play exactly as written, and then at home playing for you in the dark, trying to get every note right as if that would somehow bring you back or make you proud. A tear slipped down her cheek, but it felt different from the tears of humiliation she had shed the night before. These were cleansing somehow, washing away something that had been clouding her vision. But music isn't about being perfect, is it? That's not why we loved it. That's not why you gave me that piano. She stood up, her legs stiff from sitting so long. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the cemetery grounds. She had been here for hours without realizing it. I need to go home, she told Tom. May will be wondering where I am. As she walked back to her car, Sophia felt something shift inside her. Not healing. That seemed too strong a word for whatever was happening. But perhaps the beginning of healing, like the first green shoot after a long winter. The drive home took her past Oak Ridge High School. On impulse, she pulled into the empty parking lot. Saturday afternoon. The building would be deserted except for perhaps the weekend custodian. She used her key card to enter through the side door near the music room. The hallways were dim, the usual clamor of teenage voices replaced by a stillness that felt almost sacred. Her classroom was exactly as she had left it Friday afternoon. Chairs arranged in a semicircle, sheet music stacked neatly on the upright piano in the corner, student assignments waiting to be graded on her desk. Sophia sat down at the piano, not the grand piano on the auditorium stage where she practiced for the talent show, but the humble upright that had been in this classroom since before she started teaching. Its keys were yellowed with age, some of them slightly uneven, the middle C sticking occasionally when the weather was damp. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. Not Chopin this time, but a simple melody she had composed years ago when May was a baby and wouldn't sleep. A lullaby that had never been written down, existing only in her fingers and her memory. She played it imperfectly, missing notes here and there, the tempo uneven. But she didn't stop. She let the music come as it would, broken and beautiful all at once. When she finished, she realized she wasn't alone. Mr. Lee stood in the doorway, a mop in one hand, surprise evident on his weathered face. Mrs. Chen, he said, I didn't expect anyone to be here today. Sophia felt heat rise to her face. I'm sorry. I just needed to play something. He nodded as if this made perfect sense. Music helps, he said simply. After my wife died, I listened to her records every night for a year. Still do sometimes. She hadn't known he was a widower, too. In all their brief exchanges, that fact had never come up. Does it get easier? She asked before she could stop herself. His smile held more sadness than joy. Not easier. Different. The pain changes shape. He started to back out of the doorway. I'll leave you to your playing. No, Sophia said quickly. That's okay. I was just leaving. But as she gathered her things, she realized she didn't want to leave, not yet. There was something unfinished here, something she needed to understand. Mr. Lee, she called as he turned to go. Would you like to hear another song? He leaned his mop against the wall. I would like that very much, Mrs. Chen. And so she played again, this time a melody she hadn't touched in years, a folk song her mother had taught her long ago. She played it without thinking about technique or audience expectations. She played it for herself, and for the kind janitor who stood quietly by the door, his eyes closed as he listened. When the last note faded, he opened his eyes. Very beautiful, he said. Thank you. Sophia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Because for the first time in 2 years, she had played without feeling Tom's absence like a physical pain. She had played for the simple joy of making music. It wasn't a comeback. It wasn't healing. But it was a start. Monday morning arrived with the shrill sound of Sophia's alarm clock. She reached out to silence it, momentarily disoriented. She had actually slept through the night, something that hadn't happened in months. The familiar routine of getting ready for school felt different somehow. As she stood in front of her closet choosing her clothes, she found herself reaching for a bright blue blouse she hadn't worn in ages, instead of her usual muted colors. Small change, but it felt significant. Downstairs, May was already eating breakfast, textbooks spread around her bowl of cereal. She looked up when Sophia entered, her eyes widening slightly at the splash of color her mother was wearing. New blouse? She asked carefully. Old one, actually, Sophia replied, pouring herself coffee. Just haven't worn it in a while. They ate in companionable silence, both seemingly afraid to disturb the fragile peace that had settled between them. As Sophia gathered her things to leave, May spoke up. Mom? About the talent show. Sophia paused, one hand on her car keys. It's okay, May, really. No, it's not. I pushed you into something you weren't ready for. I was being selfish. Sophia set her bag down and came back to the kitchen table. You weren't being selfish. You were trying to help me, and maybe, she took a deep breath, maybe it was something I needed to face even if it didn't go well. May looked unconvinced. You were so upset. I was, Sophia admitted. I still am a little. But I've been thinking a lot this weekend. About your dad, about music. About what happens next. What does happen next? May asked, hope creeping into her voice. Sophia smiled, a small but genuine smile. I'm not sure yet, but something. At school, Sophia braced herself for pitying looks or awkward silences from colleagues who might have attended the talent show. But aside from a sympathetic smile from the art teacher, no one mentioned it. Either they hadn't been there, or they were being kind enough not to bring it up. Her first class of the day was beginning piano, 20 freshmen at various levels of enthusiasm and ability. Normally, she would start the class with scale exercises. But today, she sat on her piano bench and faced them directly. Today, she said, we're going to talk about failure. The classroom grew quiet. A few students exchanged confused glances. How many of you have ever messed up while playing? Hit wrong notes, lost your place, forgot the music entirely? Nearly every hand went up, and how did it make you feel? Stupid, said a boy in the back row. Embarrassed, offered a girl with braces. Like I wanted to disappear, another student added. Sophia nodded. I felt all those things Saturday night at the community talent show. I went on stage to play a piece I've known for years, and I completely fell apart. People laughed. It was humiliating. The students stared at her, clearly not used to a teacher admitting failure so openly. But here's what I realized afterward, Sophia continued. Music isn't about being perfect. It never has been. It's about connecting, with yourself, with the composer's intentions, with your audience. And sometimes that connection gets lost when we're too worried about getting every note exactly right. She turned to the piano and played a simple C major scale, clean, precise, technically perfect. Then she played a jazz-influenced variation of the same scale, with subtle shifts in rhythm and a few blue notes thrown in. "Which one felt more alive to you?" she asked. "The second one," several students answered. "But the first one was correct, wasn't it? Every note exactly as written. So why did the second one feel better?" A quiet girl in the front row spoke up. "Because it had feeling in it." Sophia smiled at her. "Exactly. Today I want you all to make some beautiful mistakes. Play something you know, but change it somehow. Make it yours." The lesson that followed was unlike any Sophia had taught before. Students experimented, laughed at their own mistakes, applauded each other's creative variations. The room buzzed with energy that had never been there during the usual technical exercises. When the bell rang, several students lingered, asking questions or showing Sophia variations they were particularly proud of. After they left, she sat alone at the piano, feeling drained but somehow lighter than she had in months. A soft knock at the door made her look up. Mr. Lee stood there with his cleaning cart. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "Just checking if the room is empty." "Come in," Sophia said. "I have a free period." He hesitated, then entered, absently wiping down a nearby desktop with his cloth. "I heard your lesson," he said, "about beautiful mistakes." Sophia felt her cheeks warm. "You think it's silly?" "No," he said seriously. "I think it's wise. My wife, she loved to sing, not professionally, just for joy. Her voice wasn't perfect, but it was real, authentic. It was the most he had ever shared about his personal life." Sophia felt honored by his confidence. "Would you like to hear something?" she asked impulsively. "I've been working on a piece. It's not finished yet." He nodded, leaning against the wall as she turned to the piano. Sophia began to play, not Chopin or Debussy, but something new, something that had been forming in her mind since her visit to Tom's grave. It was simple, with echoes of the lullaby she had created for May, but with a depth and complexity that spoke of both loss and hope. When she finished, Mr. Lee was silent for a moment. "That is yours?" he finally asked. "You wrote this?" Sophia nodded, suddenly self-conscious. "It's just something I've been playing with." "It is very beautiful," he said. "You should finish it." After he left, Sophia remained at the piano, expanding on the themes she had started, letting the music take shape under her fingers. Before she knew it, her free period was over and students were filing in for her next class. The days that followed fell into a new pattern. Sophia still taught her regular curriculum, but she made time for creativity and expression in every lesson. She started coming to school earlier and staying later, using the empty music room to work on her composition. Mr. Lee often found reasons to clean near the music room during these times. He never interrupted, just listened quietly as he worked, occasionally offering a comment or suggestion. Sophia found herself looking forward to these moments, to having an audience of one who understood what she was trying to create. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the talent show disaster, Sophia arrived home to find a flyer on the kitchen table. "Hospital benefit concert," it read, "in support of the music therapy program." May came into the kitchen as Sophia was reading it. "Mrs. Rivera dropped it off," she said cautiously. "She's on the organizing committee. They're looking for performers." Sophia set the flyer down. "May, I know. It's too soon. I shouldn't have even mentioned it." May held up her hands defensively. "I just thought you might want to know about it. Not to perform. Maybe just to attend." Sophia looked at her daughter, at the hope she was trying so hard to hide, the care she was taking not to push too hard this time. "When is it?" she asked. May's eyes widened slightly. 6 weeks from now, at the hospital auditorium. That's where Dad had his music therapy sessions." May nodded. "That's why Mrs. Rivera thought you might be interested. The proceeds go to expanding the program." Sophia picked up the flyer again, studying it more carefully this time. The program had been a bright spot in Tom's final weeks. The therapist coming to his room with her guitar, playing the songs that brought back happy memories, teaching him simple rhythms to tap out when the pain medication made it hard for him to focus on anything else. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Later that night, after May had gone to bed, Sophia sat at Tom's piano. She had been avoiding it since the talent show, choosing instead to play only at school, but tonight something drew her to it. She opened the lid and ran her fingers lightly over the keys, not pressing hard enough to make sound, just feeling their familiar contours. Then she began to play her new composition, softly at first, then with growing confidence as the piece evolved under her hands. It still wasn't finished. There was a middle section that didn't quite work, a transition that felt forced. But for the first time, she could see the shape of the whole thing, could feel where it wanted to go. When she finished, she sat in the darkness, listening to the last notes fade. "What do you think?" she whispered as if Tom might answer from the shadows. "Should I do it? Try again?" Of course no answer came. But in the silence she felt a certainty growing. The hospital benefit wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It wasn't about redeeming herself after her public failure. It was about the music therapy program that had brought comfort to Tom, and to countless other patients and families. The next morning, she called Mrs. Rivera. "I'd like to perform at the benefit," she said, her heart pounding as the words left her mouth. "But not Chopin. Something original." Mrs. Rivera's delight was evident even over the phone. "Oh, Sophia, that's wonderful. They'll be thrilled to have you. What's your piece called?" Sophia hesitated. Until that moment, she hadn't thought about a title for her composition. "It's called After Winter," she said finally. That afternoon, she shared her decision with Mr. Lee as he swept the music room floor. "You are brave," he said simply. "Or foolish," Sophia replied with a small laugh. "After what happened last time, not foolish," he said firmly. "When we fall, we have two choices, stay down or get up. Getting up takes courage, but what if I fail again? What if I freeze or people laugh?" He leaned on his broom, considering her question. "My wife had a saying, fear is just excitement without breath. When she was nervous about something, she would take 3 deep breaths and say, 'Now I'm excited instead of afraid.'" Sophia tried it. 3 slow, deliberate breaths. "I'm not sure it works that easily," she said. He smiled. "Practice. Like scales on the piano." Over the following weeks, Sophia worked on After Winter every day. She refined the rough sections, strengthened the transitions, and finally composed the ending that had eluded her. The piece told the story of grief and healing, of winter giving way reluctantly to spring. She practiced in the empty auditorium before school, with Mr. Lee as her sole audience. Unlike her frantic preparation for the talent show, this practice felt purposeful, centered. She wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. She was simply sharing something she had created, something that mattered to her. 2 weeks before the hospital benefit, the principal stopped by the music room after school. "I hear you're performing at the hospital benefit," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "An original composition?" Sophia nodded, feeling self-conscious. "It's something I've been working on. Would you consider playing it for the spring assembly? We're focusing on creativity and resilience this year." The thought of performing in front of the entire student body made Sophia's stomach clench. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," she admitted. The principal smiled. "Think about it. No pressure. But I've been hearing from your students that something's different in your classes lately. Something good." After she left, Sophia sat at the piano, running through After Winter once more. As her fingers moved over the keys, she realized that something was different. The piece had become more than just notes on a page or even a tribute to Tom. It had become a new voice, her voice, emerging after a long silence. That evening at home, she showed May the completed piece for the first time, playing it all the way through while her daughter sat beside her on the bench. When the final notes faded, May was quiet for a long moment. "That was beautiful, Mom," she finally said, her voice thick with emotion. "Dad would have loved it." "Yes," Sophia agreed, surprised to find that the thought brought more comfort than pain. "I think he would have." The night of the hospital benefit arrived with a spring rain that turned the world soft and shimmery under the streetlights. Sophia stood in front of her bedroom mirror, smoothing down the front of her dress, not the blue one from the talent show disaster, but a deep green that reminded her of new leaves. "Mom?" May called from downstairs. "Mrs. Rivera is here. We should leave soon." "Coming," Sophia replied, taking one final look at her reflection. Her hair was pulled back simply, her makeup minimal. She looked like herself, not trying to be someone she wasn't, not hiding behind anything. Downstairs, Mrs. Rivera greeted her with a warm hug. "You look lovely," she said. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous," Sophia admitted, "but a different kind of nervous than last time." "Good nervous?" Mrs. Rivera asked, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Sophia thought about Mr. Lee's wife saying. Excited, she corrected herself, taking a deep breath. I'm excited. The hospital auditorium was smaller than the community center where the talent show had been held, but it was filling quickly. As a board member of the hospital foundation, Mrs. Rivera led them to seats reserved in the front row. Backstage, Sophia could hear the bustle of performers preparing, a local choir warming up, a string quartet tuning their instruments. The program listed her in the second half. Sophia Chen, piano. After Winter, original composition. I'm going to go backstage, Sophia told May. Will you be okay sitting with Mrs. Rivera? May squeezed her hand. I'll be fine. You'll be amazing. Backstage was a maze of hallways and small dressing rooms. As Sophia tried to find her way to the green room, she nearly collided with someone coming around a corner. Mr. Lee, she exclaimed, surprised to see the school janitor in a crisp button-up shirt instead of his usual work clothes. What are you doing here? He smiled, seeming almost shy. I bought a ticket to hear you play. You've heard me practice a dozen times, Sophia said, touched by his support. This is different, he replied simply. This is the real performance. A stagehand approached them. Ms. Chen, we have a practice room available if you'd like to warm up before your piece. Sophia nodded, then turned back to Mr. Lee. Wish me luck? You don't need luck, he said. Just remember to breathe. The practice room was small but private, with an upright piano that had seen better days. Sophia ran through parts of After Winter, not playing the entire piece. She was saving that energy for the stage, but just enough to feel the keys under her fingers, to remind herself of the emotional journey the music would take her on. As she played, she thought about how far she had come since that night at the talent show. The humiliation still stung when she let herself remember it, but it no longer defined her. It had become just one difficult moment in a long story. From the auditorium, she could hear applause as the first half of the program concluded. Soon it would be her turn. The familiar anxiety began to creep in, the tightness in her chest, the slight tremble in her hands. But this time she didn't fight it. She acknowledged the fear, took 3 deep breaths as Mr. Lee had suggested, and told herself, now I am excited instead of afraid. It didn't banish the nerves completely, but it helped. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. 10 minutes, Ms. Chen, the stagehand called. Sophia made her way to the wings of the stage where she could watch the current performers, the string quartet playing a lively Vivaldi piece. As she listened, she noticed something she hadn't before. They weren't playing perfectly. There were small inconsistencies in their timing, moments where the intonation wasn't quite right, but the music was alive, vibrant with energy and emotion. Beautiful mistakes, she thought, and smiled to herself. When the quartet finished to enthusiastic applause, the MC, a doctor from the oncology department, took the stage. Next, he announced, we have a special performance. Sophia Chen, a music teacher at Oak Ridge High, will play an original composition titled After Winter. Ms. Chen's husband was a patient in our music therapy program, and she has created this piece in his memory. Sophia hadn't known they would mention Tom. She felt a momentary panic. This made it so much more personal, so much more vulnerable. But there was no time to worry about it now. The doctor was gesturing to her, and the audience was applauding politely as she walked onto the stage. The piano waited at center stage, its lid propped fully open. This was a proper grand piano, not the upright she had been practicing on at school. Its gleaming surface reflected the stage lights, intimidating in its perfection. Sophia sat down at the bench, adjusting it slightly. In the front row, she could see May watching intently, Mrs. Rivera beside her. A few rows back, Mr. Lee sat with perfect posture, as if ready to catch every note. She placed her hands on the keys and closed her eyes for a moment, gathering herself. In that brief darkness, she sensed rather than saw Tom beside her, as he had been so many times when she played at home. Not a ghost, but a memory so strong it felt like presence. Then she began to play. After Winter opened quietly, with a simple, almost hesitant melody in the right hand over a steady pulse in the left, like the first tentative green shoots pushing through snow. The melody repeated, gaining confidence, beginning to vary and explore. Sophia's fingers moved surely over the keys, finding the emotions she had poured into this piece over the past weeks. As the middle section began, she allowed the music to darken, to struggle. Dissonant chords and fragmented phrases evoked the pain of loss, the difficulty of moving forward. Her body swayed slightly as she played, no longer rigid with fear but flowing with the music. In her peripheral vision, she could see the audience leaning forward, drawn in by the story the music was telling. She wasn't playing for them, exactly, but she was sharing something with them, inviting them into an experience that was deeply personal yet somehow universal. The final section of the piece emerged from the darkness, a transformation of the opening theme, the same notes but fuller now, supported by rich harmonies that spoke of acceptance and healing, not a simple happy ending. There were still moments of dissonance, still echoes of grief, but a genuine movement toward light. As Sophia played the final passage, she felt something release inside her, a knot of tension she had carried for so long she had forgotten it was there. The music flowed through her with an ease she hadn't felt in years, perhaps ever. She wasn't thinking about technique or audience reaction or even Tom. She was simply inside the music and the music was inside her. The final chord faded slowly into silence. For a moment no one moved. Sophia remained with her hands on the keys, eyes closed, letting the last vibrations dissipate. Then she heard it, a sound from the audience. Not laughter this time, but its opposite. Someone was crying. She opened her eyes and saw a woman in the third row with tears streaming down her face. Beside her, a man had his arm around her shoulders, his own eyes glistening. They weren't the only ones. Throughout the auditorium, people were wiping their eyes, reaching for tissues, holding hands. In the front row, May was crying openly, her face alight with pride despite the tears. When the applause came, it built slowly, like a wave gathering force. It wasn't the polite, obligatory applause of people being kind to an amateur. It was the deep, genuine response of an audience that had been moved. Sophia stood, slightly dizzy with emotion, and bowed. As she straightened, she caught Mr. Lee's eye. He wasn't clapping. Instead, he pressed his palms together in front of his heart and bowed slightly, a gesture of profound respect that meant more to her than the loudest applause. As she walked off stage, legs shaky beneath her, the hospital's music therapist was waiting in the wings. "That was extraordinary," she said, taking Sophia's trembling hands in her own. "Would you consider recording that piece for our patients? It expresses so much of what they go through, what their families go through." Sophia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "And," the therapist continued, "we've been looking for someone to lead a music workshop for our family support group. People who've lost loved ones like you. Music can help them express what they can't say in words." "I'm not a therapist," Sophia said when she found her voice. "No, but you're someone who's walked the path they're on, and you found a way to transform that experience into something beautiful. That's what they need to see, that there's a way forward." In the lobby after the performance, people kept approaching Sophia, not just to compliment her playing, but to share stories. A woman whose husband was currently in treatment, an elderly man who had lost his wife last year, a teenage boy whose mother had died when he was young. Each of them had found something in her music that spoke to their own experience. May watched from a few feet away, beaming through her tears as her mother connected with person after person. When there was finally a lull, she came forward and wrapped her arms around Sophia. "I knew you could do it," she whispered. "I didn't," Sophia admitted, hugging her back, "but I'm glad I tried." Later that night, after Mrs. Rivera had dropped them home and May had gone to bed, Sophia sat alone at Tom's piano. The house was quiet, but it no longer felt empty. It felt peaceful. She played a few notes of After Winter, then let her hands rest on the keys. "I did it, Tom," she said softly. "Not perfectly, but honestly." She could almost hear his reply. "That's my girl." The weeks that followed brought changes, some small and some larger. Sophia recorded After Winter for the hospital's music therapy program. She started a weekly workshop for their family support group, teaching simple improvisation techniques that helped participants express feelings they couldn't put into words. At school, she rewrote some of her curriculum, incorporating more creativity and personal expression alongside technical skill. Her students responded with enthusiasm, many of them composing their own pieces for the first time. She performed After Winter again at the school's spring assembly. This time she wasn't afraid. Nervous, yes. The good kind of nervous that meant she cared about what she was sharing. But the paralyzing fear was gone. Mr. Lee was in the audience that day, sitting inconspicuously in the back row. Afterward, he helped her put away the music stands as the auditorium emptied. "You have found your voice," he said as they worked. Sophia considered this. "I think maybe I'm finding it," she said. "It's a process," he nodded. "Like grieving?" "Yes, exactly like that." As they finished, he hesitated, then said, "There is a concert next month at the Cultural Center. Chinese classical music, perhaps. You might like to attend, with me." Sophia looked at him surprised. Then she smiled. "I'd like that very much." That evening, she and May ate dinner on the back porch, enjoying the spring air. May was telling a story about her day at school, gesturing animatedly with her fork, laughing at her own jokes. Sophia watched her daughter, really seeing her, the young woman she was becoming, so much like Tom in some ways and entirely her own person in others. "What?" May asked, catching her mother's gaze. "Nothing," Sophia said. "I'm just happy to be here with you." And she was. The grief wasn't gone. It would never be gone entirely. But it had changed shape, just as Mr. Lee had said it would. It had become part of her story rather than the end of it. Later, after May had gone upstairs to do homework, Sophia sat at the piano. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. Not After Winter this time, but something new. Something that was just beginning to take shape, note by note, under her hands. She didn't have a title for it yet, but as she played, exploring this new musical territory, she thought perhaps she would call it Spring.